Well, Jesus came and proclaimed the good news of new life under God's reign. And he fed the hungry and healed the sick. And he called the disciples and sent them out to do the same things. But here's a challenge. Do I really want to do the same thing that Jesus did in our society in here? Do we, as a community of faith and Calvary, want to do the same thing that Jesus did in our own community? Yes. We all want to bring new life among us and around us. And how? Come to Jesus. He has the power to transform us and make us whole. Well, according to the text today, there were so many people who were following Jesus, but two individuals came to Jesus with a faith. That made a huge difference. That's what we are going to share through the text today. Well, verse 21, it says, Jesus crossed the lake again. Well, I don't think there was a heavy traffic like in here in Bay Area when Jesus crossed the lake. But we know there are so many people who are following Jesus desperately here and there. So text continued, and on the other side, a large crowd were following him. They were desperately searching for Jesus and following him with their own expectations. Well, among the crowd, the Gospel of Mark point out to two individuals. One is called Jairus, and another is unnamed woman. Jairus is one of the synagogue leaders, which means that he was a respected leader in the community. But when he came to Jesus, verse 22b says, he fell at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him, all because of his daughter was dying. Later in the text, it says she was only 12 years old. So 12 years old daughter is dying. So a respected synagogue leader came to Jesus at the feet. Well, during the years of my ministry, I met many individuals at a hospital because of their beloved ones. I still remember one of them says, Pastor, as a father, it is so painful to watch my son is lying on the bed. Well, I didn't express my love enough for him, how much I love him. So it is so painful. It's really torturing my heart just watching him and powerlessly. So now I understand what it means when Jesus died for someone else. So if I can bring my son's life again, I'm willing to give my own life. I mean it. And he cried. Today, so many people are living and dying and here and there and every day. And we all have someone who has a serious illness among children or any family members. So we can easily identify with Jairus. So when he came to Jesus, he threw himself and begging for help in front of a large crowd. It doesn't matter how others see. It doesn't matter how others says. Not because he did not know the conflict between Jerusalem leaders and Jesus, but because he was so desperate to save his own daughter from dying. So he said in verse 23 in B, my daughter is about to die. So please come and place your hands on her, then she can be healed and live. That's his faith. Place your hands on her, then she can be healed. That's why I come here. So Jesus went with him. Not because he was wealthy. Some of them they think Jesus went with him because he was a respected leader of the community. No. Not because he was an influential community leader, but because of his faith that Jesus can heal his daughter. So that's why Jesus went with him. Well, in our world, the people are trying to figure out who's more important. The people are trying to figure out who's more valuable. So as an example, and they are talking about how self-driving the car policy should be made to determine life and death and everything in between. We know when we drive a car, we're supposed to stay on the lane, right? But what if we don't have enough time to stop? Which means that we are in danger of losing life. Should we program the self-driving car to turn to the next lane, which means hit another car, and then to kill that person in order to save my life? Who should have a determining and the power? Government? Or programmer? Or consumer? And car makers? That's what the people in Silicon Valley and around the world are talking about and worry about. So what does the scripture says? Can you get some principle from the scripture? Well, we can grab some insight from the text. Jesus went out to heal, not because he was wealthy. In our society, we may see others by looking, but God sees in our heart. In God's eye, we are all same. So here's some example that the Jesus treated everyone equally. On the way to go to the Jairus' house, he encountered some woman who has a totally different social status. She had been struggling for chronic illness, the bleeding problems for 12 years. We don't know how old she was, but we know how difficult life she went through with that bleeding disease. In the Old Testament, the people regarded some woman who had a bleeding problem as unclean. So anybody who has a contact with her is also unclean. Therefore, she must be stay in the outside of a community, which means as an outcast, she had to live without the family and totally isolated place. That's what she had to live for 12 years. For 12 years, she did what she could do to find the doctors who could cure that disease, probably with the family's help. The Message Bible paraphrased the situation and like this. A long succession of physicians had treated her badly and taking all her money and leaving her worse off than before. It sounds like that they didn't care about her suffering. What they care is about money. Simply, she was abused by society, and physically, emotionally, and financially. But here's the good news: is that one day she heard about the Jesus. So we don't know and who told that story of Jesus. Maybe some family members or friends. Maybe traveling merchant who brought something to the outside of the community for that outcast where they live. We don't know what story of Jesus she heard. Maybe it was a story of Jesus who touched a leper that nobody wanted to touch. But when Jesus touched you, what happened? Immediately he was healed. So he decided to come to Jesus. But problem is, she has a bleeding problem, which means she's unclean. She cannot be in public place. But she cannot ignore this opportunity. So she decided to come. The only thing that she wanted is touch the garments, the robe. It doesn't have to be in front of him, even from the back. That's what all she wanted. So she came, and she did. As soon as she touched the robe, Jesus' robe, she could realize that she was healed. So no more bleeding or whatever caused she desperately wanted actually happened, not by cost but by faith when she touched Jesus' clothes. At that moment, Jesus asked strange questions. Who touched me? Well, being in a large crowd while they are pushing and holding each other, who cared who touched whom? But Jesus said, who touched me? So that moment, only the woman knew what she did and what happened to her. So she came to Jesus with a fear and trembling. Well, she didn't steal any healing power. She didn't even ask the healing touch. Only thing she did was just touching his garment. But she came with a fear and trembling. Not because she did something wrong, but because she aware God's presence at that moment. So that's why she came with a fear and trembling and worship the Lord and confess everything what happened to her. Well, and another healing story goes on to Jairus' house. While he was surrounded by many people who were crying and wailing loudly, and Jesus said to Jairus, who came to him with a faith, don't be afraid. Just keep trusting. That present moment, Jesus just asked Jairus, don't be afraid, just keep trusting. And then he even raised the person who was declared dead. So, what does it tell us who are living and dying in this society today? So, what does it tell us who come to Jesus to worship the Lord this morning? Jesus is saying that, who's touched me? Who's going to touch me? Who's going to touch my heart? So, where am I in this story? In a woman's, like an unnamed woman's, or Jairus. Whoever we are, wherever we are, here's some good news. In verse 34, Jesus says to the unnamed woman who had a new life and is saying, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Jesus didn't take any credit from healing, but pointing out your faith made a difference. And it is not just a physical healing, but also restoring her life in the world. So Jesus said, "Go in peace, healed from the old disease." Yes, that's what Jesus wants to see happen in our life. Jesus wants us to have a right relationship, that loving relationship with God and with everyone. So Jesus is looking for the one at this moment. So who touched me by faith? So at this moment, all we need is Jesus. No matter where we are, no matter who we are, all I need is Jesus, because Jesus is the only hope. So shall we all stand and claim that faith? Jesus, all I need is you. Jesus, all I want is you. You are the only hope. So let us sing.